Welcome to podcast episode 521 of Get Paid for Your Pad. Today we're talking about somebody who in the last 1.5 years went from 25 to now 110 short-term rental units, which is an incredible accomplishment. So I'm super excited to have on the show today Mr. David Bergmann, the co-founder of Heartwood Furnished Homes, a short-term rental management company out of Columbia, South Carolina. And today we're talking about the biggest learning lessons from going from 25 to 110. And we're also going to dive into the fact that David recently purchased a laundromat to do all his linens, which is a really interesting topic that we haven't discussed much about. So I'm super excited. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here. And thanks for having me.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this episode for a while because it's very inspiring to see you in the last year and a half, to see you make this, this go through this growth. So let's start at the beginnings. Like, can you give us a big, a quick background story of like how did you get started with short-term rentals and your journey over the last year and a half?
Yeah, sure. So we got my wife and I are the co-founders of Heartwood Furnished Homes. So we started this back in 2017, kind of by accident. We, I don't know if people may recall, there was a total solar eclipse that happened in 2017. And this was kind of a big event where you would get a certain period of darkness in the sky. And Columbia, South Carolina, for some strange reason, I'm sure there's a scientific explanation, but had one of the longest durations of blackout during that date. So we read in the newspaper that there was absolutely no hotels left, like you couldn't find anywhere to stay. And we had heard of Airbnb and we thought, well, we can just go stay with our parents or my parents and put our own house on Airbnb. So that's how we got started. And we did that. And within a few hours, we had somebody booking our place for $750 a night and paid our mortgage. And we were like, whoa, this is really cool. So that got our our juices flowing. We started to think about other opportunities. I was always interested in rental properties, and my wife's an architect and I have kind of more of a numbers background. So we kind of had a good partnership in that way. So we're actually in the process already of fixing up a rental property around the corner, a duplex. And so we quickly went from going, oh, maybe this long-term rental thing is not quite as profitable as the short-term rental thing could be. And so we became investors ourselves in short-term rentals. And that's kind of how we got started initially, is just we actually, with our full-time jobs, going out, buying properties with conventional mortgages, doing cash out refis, and making them short-term rentals. So we did that with about 4 units before even considering any sort of management or leasing of properties or anything like that. So that's kind of our initial journey into this. And that's what got us think. I really did not think that this thing at that time, that this was scalable beyond perhaps a couple units. It just seemed so time consuming. But as I learned from you and others that there is a way to make the scale, and it began to get us interested in the next steps, which is kind of where we've kind of been going to now, which is this becoming our job, becoming our business, and really developing our lifestyle around this. So we ultimately were looking to quit our jobs, and that's what we've been able to accomplish over that time, as both my wife and I are now full-time in the business. But it was certainly a journey to get there, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But that's kind of where we got started.
It's so funny because like almost everyone in this business got started by accident, right? And like a solar eclipse is that's just a really interesting event, like. So it's so crazy how life sometimes just depends on these like little coincidences or these moments that we have no control over that just happens, and suddenly like our paths are completely different than if that event wouldn't have happened, maybe, right? So it's so interesting. So you started with a couple units, and then how did you make the decision to go into the management side?
Yeah. So we actually started, I heard of this thing called rental arbitrage or master leasing. So I actually started doing that first at the time. And the reason we did that is because my wife's actually a really good decorator as well. She's just got this great eye for, that classic short-term rental design that I think we now come to expect from professional short-term rentals. And so we knew that by basically renting a place and then putting her skills to work on the furnishing side, that we could do pretty well that way. So we actually started out by picking up, I think, probably 8 master leases early on before we even started managing. And those 8 are pretty much all that we have now. We haven't really picked up any additional leases, but we actually got contacted by somebody in our city who was running a short-term rental and was just tired of it. And they saw that we had good reviews and they asked if we were interested. And I said, sure, we'll give it a shot. And then we just kind of bootstrapped it from there, creating our service agreements, doing research as needed to really build out the management side, the reports. We already had the software really because we were managing our own units and managing the master lease units. So it was pretty natural just building out just that additional stuff that like a true client would need under a property management arrangement. That's what took a little bit of extra work, but it was pretty seamless. And then from there, it was really, I'm pretty involved because my interest was really in actually investing. I was pretty involved in some of the local investing networks in Colombia. And so I've been able to meet a lot of people there and get them interested, but a lot of them are not interested in doing the day-to-day work. So we kind of step in and help them make money on their portfolio here in Colombia. So that's how we got started, is really helping investors. We've since expanded a little, to be more in a couple different areas around Colombia. For instance, there's a big lake here called Lake Murray, and we're also there. That's kind of a secondary market for us, but it's more of a vacation rental market. So we've also kind of moved into that area as well, but really just started helping investors get them the returns that they want. And once we proved ourselves with them, it was very easy to show them the value of continuing to pick up properties with us and allowing us to manage. So that's a lot of what I think that initial growth was about.
Sure. And then, we met in April 2021. You were actually in the very first class of our program, Legends X, where I think you were around like 25 units. What were sort of the challenges that you were facing that made you join the program?
Yeah, everything that we call the hectic host is facing, trying to do everything in the business at that time. I think 20 properties is about that point where you still have to do everything and wear all the hats, but you don't necessarily have the cash flow to support a head count. So that's the challenge, I think, there. And we are also, my wife and I were trying to get paid by the business as well and moving out of our full-time jobs. So even more so, we didn't have the revenue to support headcount. So I think that was the challenge we were facing there, is just like, okay, how do you get from 20 to 30 so that you can maybe afford an employee or a couple employees, and also be able to pay yourself and get yourself out of the right type of activities, choosing what those most valuable activities that we'd like to get off our plate would be. And that was the main thing. I think we had our systems pretty locked in. We learned some stuff in Legends about how to improve those systems, but we felt pretty strong on systems. It was more about the people side. And that's what I liked about Legends, is there's that initial focus on the people, and as well also the business and your goals, which we hadn't really thought through at that time. So I think we needed to kind of take a step back initially too, and decide what is it we're trying to accomplish, besides just, quit our day jobs.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, that was the that really kicked off, like, how do we hire right? How do we get people in to take over some of those responsibilities, and encouraged us through that network of people we met to hire our first maintenance person and to hire our first cleaning supervisor, who really helped us handle the growth that would come and are still with us today.
Yeah. And then, I would love to hear, like, after you finished the program about a year and a half ago, less than 1.5 years ago, you then grew from 25 to 110, right? I would love to hear, like, what are the 3 things that you learned throughout that process, or the 3 piece of advice that you have for somebody who's currently in your shoes at like 20 units and trying to break through that barrier?
Yeah, I think the timing of the hiring is really important, and hiring the right people is really important. I thought about both of those things a lot at that stage, and I still think about those. Like, you kind of have to invest in your people before you need them. And that's kind of a struggle for me. I kind of like to, like, oh, we need them now, we can afford them now, let's now bring them in. But you kind of can't do that. You have to make the investment sometimes earlier, and then grow into them. So I think that's an important consideration. Like, if you're at 20 and you can't really afford an employee, do you still want to make that investment, knowing that you are growing to 30 within the next couple months, and that person will, like, do you want to be that person still doing that job from 20 to 30 properties? Are you going to be able to do that and keep up with the onboarding and everything else in your business? Or is it better to just go ahead and make that hire? I think there's there's some optimal level in there where you want to go ahead and start, if the growth is coming, go ahead and get some of those hires in place. So I think that's one of the key things that I had to learn through that process, not coming from a background of hiring people. My background was as an actuary in an insurance company. So I was very numbers focused, and I was just a sole contributor. I didn't manage people. So for me, I never really had to worry about resource allocation. So that was one thing that I had to learn very quickly, because, at the time, just hiring a couple, but now having, a lot of employees, that became more and more important. I'd say the other thing is just, like, along the same lines, is hiring the right people. I think everybody, it's tough. I mean, it's tough to find the right people for the right seats. We all have different capabilities, different strengths and weaknesses, myself included. And I think that's always going to be a persistent struggle in any business. And we now have the right people, but we had to go through some bad people to get there, or not good fit people. So just identifying that quickly, and trying your best to hire the right people. But it's tough, because a lot of people will seem like they're the right fit, or you may be very optimistic. I'm a very optimistic guy, so I see the best in everybody. So I am probably too quick to hire, but I'm cognizant if something's not a good fit. So that's one thing I had to learn.
Sure.
I think just adjusting systems quickly is the other, kind of the second thing. as you grow, like you're going to realize where the fractures are in your systems, whatever that is. And I think it's just really important to not just kind of try and deal with them in the kind of the easiest way, or just throw your own time or energy at it every single time it comes up. It's just better to consider what exactly is the root cause of this and doing that sort of analysis to understand it, and then getting down to that and figuring out, is there a better way to do things that maybe this issue can just go away completely for us, rather than us have to spend our man hours each time. And consider the cost of your time in that too. You may need to spend a little money to avoid that issue entirely, but maybe it's worth it, because if you look at the opportunity cost of your time, it pencils out better that way. So I'm all about just quickly iterating your systems and your processes to, go for that most efficient way of running things. And that's just a constant battle. And
Yeah.
the more every 10 properties, I feel like we find another fracture, like major fracture, that we have to tackle. And I think that it's just important to be really, really careful about those, because if you get 30 properties in and you haven't addressed those, then they really start to add up. So I think that's something for anybody, just to take some time as you're growing fast to, see what's going on in your business and just make sure that those things are tidied up.
Yeah.
And then I think finally is, and this is one I learned, but I also am still dealing with, but the importance of saying no to clients or to guests, but primarily clients. We have a lot of clients who are, they're very seasoned investors, and they ask a lot of us, and we try and, we're service minded, and hospitality minded. So it's easy to get into that mindset of saying yes to things that maybe don't make sense for your business or makes sense economically. So I think I've learned this the hard way by saying yes to a lot of maybe not core market properties, like they're not in my window. And I think Legends teaches about this as well. Like you want to really know who that client is, or that property type is, that you want to onboard. And I heard that at Legends, but I still have a hard time with it. And but I've now, I've had to grow that. I've had to grow that over time to be able to say, no, this really isn't in the right location for us. And this isn't really, I don't think this particular client is going to be a good fit, because they want to take control of their own property, and we're the experts, and we really do it this way, and we control all of this stuff. So it's just, and I think that's just one lesson that I'm constantly learning. And now I'm having to go back and deal with my decisions where I said yes earlier. So I'll have to go back and say, this is no longer working. But that's a more difficult conversation after the fact than it is if you had just said no from the beginning.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. And I just feel like everyone, especially people who run a business, but probably every single person in life has that challenge. I know very few people who are 100% comfortable to just always say no when they feel like it's not the right fit or whatever it is. So I feel like that's a constant struggle for us, and it takes some personal growth, to really have that confidence to just say no. I don't know where I read this, but I think it was like the book, The One Thing, where they talk about how saying no to the wrong opportunity enables you to say yes to the right opportunity. Right. So that kind of helped me change my perspective, where I was like, okay, well, I'm saying no now, but that also means I'm going to be able to say yes to something else that's a better fit. Right. So that made it a bit easier for me, where I was like, okay, it doesn't mean, it's just in the end of the day, like you have you have limited time, limited resources. It's all about like, okay, how am I deploying my resources, right? And there's always going to be, as business owners, there's always be opportunities coming our way. So that's yeah, I think that's really a really important skill set for everybody to even if you have a few listings, it's really important skill set to develop. Like you mentioned, mostly for clients, but also for guests, right? Some people struggle with that too, is like saying no to the wrong guest. So I want to go into your laundromat that you purchased. You mentioned that that's been a very insightful journey. Yeah, can you, what's your experience with laundry and linen in general, and why did you decide to buy this laundromat?
Yeah, yeah. Um, so laundry is one of those areas that I have a lot of interest in. We very early on, and I think a lot of hosts probably experienced this, but realized that we needed some sort of standardization of the laundry and the linens that are in our places. Much like a hotel, I mean, there's a lot of value in having a standard type of sheet, a standard way of making beds. So we, right around the time we started Legends, like right around the 20 property mark, we converted all of our units to a single bedding type, and we started buying that from a local hotel supplier in cases. It's like 24 counts of sheets. And that what we then did is began selling that to new clients as a requirement for onboarding. So they would buy a set from us, and then they would also pay a monthly cost to basically deal with the damage that comes with the linen, which is fairly frequent, at least in our experience here in Colombia. We just get a lot of damages, and people don't really take care of our bedding, and they don't expect to have to, I think, from their experience in hotels. So, what that allowed us to do is get all 110 properties, minus a couple that I didn't say no to, get them all onto a single bed type, so that when our cleaning crew shows up, if originally, if they needed something, we could just pull it from our back stock, and that would be very simple, but we still had the expectation that the cleaning crew would do all of the laundry off site. That began to kind of, at some point, I don't know exactly what count this happened at, but at some point it became very difficult to manage the inventory of that linen, and what was coming out from our office, and what was ending up at the units, what was not coming back, what was getting stained. And so we really needed to make a change. And this is where I, going back to adjusting systems quickly, like we had to make a change there, because we were bleeding linens, like spending, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month in linens just going out the door, and we had no idea where it was going, and it was affecting the profitability of our company. So what we decided to do was change our entire cleaning process, and we're still not fully transitioned. We're still about 50-50, but now what we have is cleaners who come to our office first thing in the morning. They pick up all of their fresh bedding. They take that bedding to the units that they're working that day, and they know exactly how many sets they need of each thing. They grab those, and we call them internally, we call these bundles. So we have like a queen bundle that it's like a plastic bag with everything you need to make a queen bed, or everything you need for a king bed, or a bathroom. So each one is labeled, and so they just have to bring out the appropriate bed size bundles and the appropriate number of bath bundles, and then they should be able to reset that place entirely without doing any laundry on site. And then they bring the soiled linen back to us, and then from there we can process it. And that's really where the laundromat came in, is because, well, that's great, and we can now keep the inventory more in control. and we can spend less time cleaning the units, which, by the way, had the extra, I guess, benefit of the fact that if you're spending less time in each unit, your cleaners, then they can do more units per day. So you actually need fewer employees, at least fewer employees working and like on the housekeeping side. You actually need somebody to do the laundry now. But so where the laundromat came in is we were getting all that inventory in, all the soiled linen, and we had a pretty good relationship with a wash and fold company, which is a great place to start a process like this if anybody's considering it, where we were doing laundry for about $1 a pound. That's usually kind of how they charge us back, is on a pound basis, and that was very, very cheap. I mean, I think in other states, maybe in your state in California, that might be closer to $2, unless you're committing a significant volume. So we were doing okay, but then our prices started to go up and up and up, and then we were paying $1.50 a pound, and so our prices, and we went out and negotiated with a lot of different wash and fold laundromats, and they were all like, look, we can't cover our cost unless we do it at this, and we don't have the margin. So I said, okay, let's find our own laundromat. And we were having issues with the wash and fold companies anyways, just as far as being able to control the quality and the output that they were doing, because they were doing the volume, but we were getting back pieces that were stained, and they were also not bundled into our bundles, so we still had additional processing that had to take place after the fact. So our costs were pretty high in that setup. So with the laundromat, we actually found this on Dotloop, which is just for people that aren't aware, that's kind of like the Zillow for commercial properties. If you want to buy or sell a commercial property, LoopNet. I'm sorry, LoopNet. Dotloop is the DocuSign type competitor. LoopNet is what I meant. But within LoopNet, what you can do is search for different property types in different industries. And we found this laundromat actually has a triplex in the back, which is really cool because we envision that to eventually become short-term rentals as well. So we went and looked at it, and they had 18 washers, 18 dryers. They were about 15 to 20-year-old equipment. It's kind of end of life equipment, but I sent our housekeepers there for a few weeks, and I said, let's try out this equipment and see how it works. And we were turning all of that soiled linen just without even owning it at the laundromat, just to see how the machines work. And it worked great. And they continue to be, good machines. And eventually we plan to invest in those, but for right now, it was great to just be able to make that acquisition of the laundromat and be able to immediately get in there, have 18 washers, 18 dryers at our disposal, and just park a laundry attendant at the property, working day to day, doing the processing of the laundry, the bundling of those, and then bringing it back to our office at the end of the day to prepare for all of the turnovers that would come in the following days. So that was kind of the way that we envisioned it. And so we're happy with the outcome. We're really happy with where it's at. And it's been really successful so far, but it's only been a short period of time.
Sure. Do you know, because you mentioned earlier you were paying first $1, then $1.50 per pound. Do you have any idea, now that you have the laundromat, what kind of cost you're running your laundry at now?
Yeah, it's about half that. It's about half that. Oh, wow. So industry, just so you know, industry average is around 60 to 70 cents a pound on commercial laundromat facilities. We're not exactly that, and we have some additional processing that we're doing on top of it. But yeah, we're running it right around 75 cents. And, so that's saving us, 50 cents a pound, 50 to 75 cents a pound, just depending on how much we're paying on the wash and fold. And that adds up when you're doing thousands of pounds a week.
Yeah, 100%. And then I think you mentioned there's also some other operational efficiencies because you have control now over the laundry. You're not depending on third party.
Yeah, that's right. Like we're getting stuff back from the third party, and they were ruining our linen. They didn't have the interest in working the stains like we do. Like if we lose a sheet, I see $20 in my mind. You know what I mean? I see the $20 bill, get flushed down the toilet. So like we inherited these top loading machines, which are kind of junk, but for a laundromat. But what's great about them is we put like all of our stain stuff into there. I'm not sure exactly what they use, but like the OxyClean, and they've got this whole chemical solution that they've got made up. Our laundry attendants do that seems to work pretty well. And they just leave that in overnight, and then we come back to it in the morning. And a lot of times we can get those stains out. So we're kind of building up this knowledge of like how to get the stains out, and by saving those pieces where we weren't before, that's leading to like we can keep more of the sheets in rotation than we ever could before. And I don't know, most people probably know, but once you set these stains, like your sheet's done. So you really you just really got to hit them hard early on. And that's the other thing, is processing them quickly, like every single day, like letting blood sit on your sheet for like a week is not a good way to address a stain. And that's what was happening before, is like we would do like one load a week to the wash and fold, and it just it was not. There's so many different operational efficiencies that we've gained, and being able to control it and do basically work everything every single day.
Yeah, that's really interesting, man. Like an 18 washers and dryers. Like you mentioned, do you know how many pounds of linen you do per month?
If right now we're only doing about 50% of our units on this system. A lot of them have wash and dry on site still. But I'm estimating right around 3,000 pounds. So about 1,000 pounds a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty significant. And these machines never saw that kind of use. I mean, this was it still is a neighborhood laundromat that probably saw like maybe each of those machines maybe saw one spin a day.
Yeah.
Nothing like this was not like, if you were looking at this as like a laundromat opportunity for a business in and of itself, this would just look like a real junker. But the the advantage to us was that like now we'll probably get 10 to 20 spins a day on each of those machines, Monday through Friday. And this is actually the coolest part. That's my favorite part. When do you think people do all of their laundry when you have customers?
It's in the weekend or in the evenings?
Weekends, yeah, the weekends and the evenings. It's perfect. So we're working there during the days, during the weekdays, and then we still have all of our paying customers coming in when they like to come in, which is after hours, because a lot of times this is working class families, and they're coming in on the times when we're not there. So we're also continue to run it as a laundromat that's open to the public, and we still make quite a bit of money that way. And so that's nice to have too. But even though it's just icing on the cake, if we didn't have any of that, we'd be fine.
Yeah, you just answered my next question, actually, because I was curious if you're still running it as a commercial property as well. So are these machines? Is this a typical laundromat where you put like the coins in, and
It
there's a
is.
machine where you can get the detergent and all of that?
Yeah, it is. It's exactly like that. It's so school. Like it's classic. I think they call it like zombie mat. It's like a
Yeah.
classic zombie mat. Like nobody's invested in this place or done anything with it for 20 years. We're doing some cool stuff. Like we're not all the way there yet, but we're like painting it like funky colors, and we've like cleaned it up. There was like an inch thick of like lint on everything. So we're cleaning it every day now, and like it's safer because we have cameras, and we painted just painting the whole thing just freshened it up. It was like this odd like yellow beige color that like was, I don't know, maybe it was popular in the 90s, but it's
Yeah.
definitely not.
Yeah. So my last question before we wrap up, what, like obviously for you, this laundromat is really working out well. It's, adds efficiencies to your operations, makes some money, extra money on the top. Like at what stage do you think it will be interesting to make this move?
Well, I think going back to what I said earlier is thinking it's very important that you have at least for our business, it was really important to have a standard linen type. None of that would be possible if I was trying to say, oh, Mary has this linen here in this bag, and then John has this linen over here in this other bag, and we were trying to keep 110 clients' linens separate. I don't know how that worked. I'm sure somebody's made it work, but like, I can't imagine it working very well for us. So thinking ahead, if you have the intent to grow and you maybe want to implement a solution like this, even if that's 50, 60, however many units, or 100 like me when I finally did it, but thinking down the road, like go ahead and maybe at 15 units or 20 units, start thinking, okay, going forward from this point on, it's only going to be this standard linen type. We're selling this to our clients. When they onboard with us, you have to tell them up front, don't buy your own linen. And then make sure that that's how things work, because by the time you need to get to this point where you want to do this, you're going to need a standard linen type.
Yeah.
So that to answer your question, it probably depends. It probably depends on a lot of different factors. And I'm just thinking through a couple of those now, but I think it depends on if there are affordable laundromats in your area that are probably available, like this one. And if you can get one like this, like a real junker like this, then maybe it makes sense, especially if you can get it cheap. But the other thing that I wanted to mention to the listeners is the other thing that was really important in what we did was developing a relationship with a local bank. Early on, we started developing that like probably a year and a half or so ago, and we started banking with them. And we actually, we began discussions a year in advance about potentially, having more units that we would buy, maybe a hotel or, something, just having the discussions ahead of time to understand what they were going to ask for in terms of like our profit and loss and all the accounting side, so that when you do find something like a laundromat that you really do want and think is worth it, that, you have a bank that's willing to look at it with you and give you that financing, because only like a local bank would do something like this. I mean, I don't think like a Bank of America would even, they'd be like, what is this? No, absolutely not. So, so yeah, I think the key will be having the standard linen, a good relationship with a bank, and a good prospective laundromat that will fit the bill. You don't need one of these high-end laundromats. At least I don't feel that you do. You just need something that'll, be able to work. Now, the maintenance side is important too. Like you don't want to get eventually you're going to have to replace the machines. So that is what it is. But I would say somewhere between 50 and 75 is where I might start thinking about it, because I'm just thinking we're at 50% capacity with 100 units, right around 50 units worth of linen is coming back to our laundromat right now. So that's probably a good starting point to think about setting up something like this. And there are other property management companies that I know of in like Charleston in South Carolina and some other local markets where they just build out their own facilities inside of their office. If that's something you want to consider too, that might actually be more economical, just depending on your area. But in Colombia, and I think in many municipalities, they pay these outrageous tap fees to start up these laundromats just because of the size of the sewer lines. Are basically, this is a tax on from the city on you. So if you're trying to avoid that cost, buying in place is sometimes much more economical than trying to do a build out.
Got it. Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for sharing all this. It's very insightful, and yeah, congratulations with everything you've achieved. It's very, very impressive to see you grow that fast. For the people who are interested in getting in touch with you, what's the best place to find you?
Yeah, you can go to our website, heartwoodfurnishedhomes.com. You can also email me at david@heartwoodfh.com. Just drop me a line, and I try and respond to everybody I get emails from. So love to chat with anybody that wants to talk.
Awesome. Heartwoodfurnishedhomes.com. Awesome, David. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time here, and yeah, good luck with everything. I'm sure we'll keep in touch, and who knows, maybe in the future we'll do another episode.
That sounds great. Thanks, Jasper.
Thanks, David. And for the listeners, thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed this. We'll be back on Friday. See you then.